contingency for each high school. For field turf in the individual proposals was $3,610,922. Ryan Sanders out of Round Rock was $5,047,808. And for Hellas Construction was $3,940,510. That was option one, as each individual we decide to give them individually. Option two was we grouped them with Edinburgh High School and Robert Bella High School and Edinburgh North and Economides. And the bids were pretty close, pretty much exactly like the first item, but they did save some money. Can't see the bottom number, let me see that. The $3,610,000 stayed the same for field turf. It went down to $4,997,808 for Ryan Sanders, and it stayed the same for Hellas Construction at $3,940,500 if they do two fields each. The option three was all four schools at one time. I understand this is the ranking only.
Thank you for joining us, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Option three, usually we would like to see the option three where we group all four and we get a better savings, but the numbers actually did not change from the option two to the option three. The numbers stayed pretty much the same. Now the alternate, the add alternate, one of the items that we had talked about is if we could get the add alternate, which really is an in-field cooling system and a drainage system that will lower the temperature on the field by about 20 degrees, knowing that these are the high schools and they'll be used throughout the day with band, football, soccer out throughout the day. They'll probably be used 50% more than what we use the one at the stadium. So we threw this in to see if we could maybe afford this or give it as an option for the board to consider. And of course, the add alternate, that means you add it to the base bid for field turf was $981,771. For Ryan Sanders was $1,234,650. And for Hellas Construction, it was $1,026,200. The ranking committee evaluated everything. We are not recommending the alternate unless the board chooses to. This will reduce the temperature on the field during the day by about 20 degrees. It's probably one of the newer type of fields, and we wanted just to see what the numbers were out there. If the board would like to consider it, we can do that. But right now we're recommending the committee felt based on the ranking criteria, the evaluation, we want to recommend all four fields, the bid option three to Hellas Construction for the $3,940,500. Primarily the evaluation was very close and very tight with the second vendor, but through reference checks, we did find some red flags in one of the firms. So we felt that Hellas Construction did an exceptional job for our district at the stadium, got it on time, on budget, and it's a field that a lot of school districts come and look at because they did an exceptional job, and all the committee members felt pretty much the same. And it's just a recommendation to the committee if they like to proceed with that, or they can look at one of the other options. With that $3,940,000, that is under the budget. The budget is $3,944,000. So we're still under the budget, and even though they're higher, we're only approving the ranking, we can still negotiate. So that's the administration's recommendation.
So you're talking about option three?
Option three.
Plus the alternate or no?
That would be up to the board. If that's another $1 million.
And what is specifically the alternate? So 20 degrees turf?
Yes.
You're going to cool the turf?
It's a cool turf.
The height of the day.
It's a different infield. You can see when you walk on the fields, you see the black infield. This has a different infield there that makes it cooler. And then the drainage pad as well makes it cooler. And it's called a GMAX pad, where it's softer for the kids in case they fall.
And so that would be the total for the four, I mean,
For the four high school.
for the four fields,
For the four high school, the million.
for the four high schools. Not $1 million each.
Yeah.
The four done for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that's the administration's recommendation.
Option 3, and consider the alternative. Is that what you say?
Your recommendation, Robert?
My recommendation is option 3, Hellas Construction.
When you, let's say, Robert, that the board were to go with Hellas, would you be able to negotiate them at least close to what the low bid is?
Yeah, that is the plan, sir, yes. To negotiate down to at least the lowest bidder, yes.
And we can't negotiate that 20 degree. That's it, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready to go. It's that I had my hearing device was not working. It's working now.
The surrounding districts that have some great fields, who has done those fields, like Parson 1?
It's been both the first bidder and the second bidder that we're recommending that done the fields. Between Shareland, McAllen, they've all been pretty much split.
Stayed with what you recommended?
Yeah.
And were the coaches or Mr. Garza involved in one way or another?
Yes, he was. Good cut.
Mr. Garza, can you give us a little feedback on how you feel about the recommendation?
Companies were tremendous work that we know of, and they're both well in the valley around the districts. Our concern is that they can get it done within the timeline. But the product is basically what everybody in the valley. I just heard FAR just approved for 4 turfs also, just last night at their board meeting.
And they went with this company?
We don't know what company yet. They just were approved by the board and they're going to that. But that was just approved to move forward with 4 turfs for the football fields. They have baseball, softball fields on turf, but they don't have any football, but they approved that last night to move forward on getting turfs. Who and what, that's down the road. Yes, ma'am.
And when you say the timeline, what is the timeline we're targeting?
We're looking at late August, Robert. I think we get, as far as August, late August, when we have our first games.
Yes.
There,
okay.
Our first scrimmages, should we say.
You'll be ready, Coach?
We could bring them to Barrientos, worst case scenario, the stadium, if one of those fields isn't done that early. But apparently, if we approve it now and they can move forward, the timeline looks good.
Okay. Mr. Farias, you have a...
no. No, ma'am, thank you.
Ms. Vela? And this is a recommendation of the administration.
Yes, ma'am.
I move for approval to be taken to the board at the next board meeting.
So move.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries. This will be taken to the full board at the next board meeting. Thank you, Robert. Item 4, discussion of bid 2223 for Economidas High School and BL Garza Middle School tennis courts project.
This item will be presented by Robert Estrada.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salinas. We received 3 bids for the tennis courts that it is in Bio Garza. We received 1 bid from Sports Surface Pros. They're out of Illinois. They were the low bid for $86,800. The next bid was Kenny Track out of Mercedes, and they're $137,279, and that's who did the last tennis court they did in South Middle School last summer. And then we have Hellas out of Austin, Texas for $256,530, and they've done a couple of other tennis courts as well for their district. Right now, we did do an evaluation because this company is from Illinois. We did look into where they did some work. The closest job they did was in Dallas. We called them. They were very happy with their work. We called other locations as far as where they did the work, and they had very positive reviews of this company. They're national. They are extremely low. We asked the company as well, who are about $48,000 lower than the other lowest bidder. They sure they're meeting the spec. We reviewed everything. They did comply with the specifications. Their background check was reviewed, and as well as their specifications they can supply and do it as soon as the tennis season's over.
Do they have any local offices that they work from, or even in Texas?
The closest we found and that we called on was Dallas. We even asked Mr. Leo Reyes. He's very familiar with the tennis community. We checked with the association. Nobody's heard of this company.
And the people working the courts will be brought from Illinois?
Yeah.
So there will be no local opportunity?
Yes, Tenny Track. That would be, and they're under budget. The budget is $175,000, and they did a very good job at South Middle School. We're okay with going with that bid as well, and keeping it local.
So they've done other jobs for us as well.
Yes, Tenny Track and Hellas have both done. They pretty much split the last tennis courts that they've done for our district.
The recommendation person.
The recommendation is a low bid, but we're okay with going to the second low bid.
So if the board were to go with a second vendor, would you be able to negotiate a better price on that?
This is a hard bid. This is not a proposal. I do not believe there is any negotiation there, but I can check with Mr. Tecarina to see if we can do that. But even the 137, the budget is 175. We're still below our budget.
But your recommendation is the company from Illinois?
That is our recommendation because of the low bid, but if we choose to, I would prefer going with Tenny Track, but because they're local, we worked with them, and they've done a good work for us.
I think, Ms. Gonzalez, if I may, that this item really needs to come to the full board for presentation, and the full board decide on what would be the recommendation at this point. We're trying very hard to stay local and help those that, even in Texas, so that is my opinion at this time.
Mr. Farias, do you have an opinion?
Yes, ma'am, if you would allow me, $50,000 is a big difference. Even though it's below budget, I'd rather be below budget by 90,000 than the other difference. If you check the references and they're happy, that's a major difference between two companies. And it makes me wonder, all the other ones they both did, if we could have saved a lot more money going with this company. if we would have heard about them earlier. I don't know how long, do you know how long they've been in business?
No, I don't. But they are national, and they did have a lot of references throughout the nation, yes.
Okay.
but not in Texas.
Very few in Texas. Very few, and like I mentioned, Leo Reyes said, the Association of Tennis that handles all the Texas area had never heard of this company.
But I think I agree with Mrs. Vela.
Yes.
I move to take this item to the board without a recommendation from the committee.
So I second. So move.
Second, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. We'll go to the board for a board recommendation. Okay, item 5, update on district tennis court lighting.
This item will be presented by Carlos Lima and Robert Estrada.
Yes, members of the committee. At the last facilities, we brought this item to you all. We looked at all the tennis courts that the district does have. This is a review of what we have presently. Of course, at the 4 high schools, at the 3 high schools, Edinburgh High, Economides, and Edinburgh North, they both have 2 lighted fields. Robert Bella does not have any lighted tennis courts. South Middle School has all 8 of their courts lit, and Memorial has 2 courts lit. The next line item is the number of courts that each of the schools have. And then the following items, all the tennis courts, that's the amount of lighting if we light all the courts in both the middle school and the high school. Now, Coach Garza recommends that we only light half the courts in each high school, which that's the number we're looking at there, which is 5 for Edinburgh High, 4 for Edinburgh North, 4 for Economides, and 4 for Robert Bella High School. And that's the cost estimates, including engineering fees that we got from one of the on-call engineers. And this is really just for discussion. The committee wanted to see what we had. Coach Garza as well is here to answer any questions, and it's really open up for discussion.
Are all the all the middle schools have lighting?
No, they have 0. Only Memorial has 2 of their 8 courts lit, and South has 8 courts, and all 8 courts are lit.
So there's no consideration to do anything at the middle schools?
That probably our last Coach Garza.
We can, but Memorial was done in conjunction with the Vaca Park. When we added the Vaca Park, we go ahead and lit those 2 courts at Memorial. We host the tournaments right now at the high schools. So that's what we've been doing because of lack of lighting. By the time we get out of school and all that, right now, by 6 o'clock, it's dark, as you know. So we've been historically having all the tournament play at the high school tennis courts. And again, we have that problem there because only 2 courts are lit. So that prolongs if there's seating and all that, or we don't finish and we have to come back the next day. So that's why we thought we could have 4 courts at every one. Normally they finish practice by 6, so that's not a problem on a daily practice at the middle school courts, but we do run into that problem when we have tournaments and they're seating individual tennis or team tennis.
Do you have the participation from each of these facilities?
Well, because the participation numbers vary, but because there's different divisions, 7th grade, 8th grade, there's mixed doubles. So there's a bunch of plus singles on each division. So that takes time. And then it's a bracketing. It's a tournament type thing where you have to play this bracket before they advance. So they don't all play at the same time. So they win, they move up to the next. So that's what the time element would become the problem. Unless we want to go to just pure Saturdays. And that's difficult because now we step on academic UIL and things of that nature. So historically we've been doing it at the high schools because they have at least some lit courts and we try to finish there.
So Coach Garza, at Barrientos, they have 4 courts, but 0 are lighted. At Biel Garza, they have 6 courts, but 0 are lighted.
Right.
At Harwell, they have 4, but 0 are lighted. And Longoria, they have 4, but 0 are lighted. So these students at Barrientos, at Biel Garza, Harwell, all the way out there, Longoria, all the way out there, they cannot use the courts at night, correct?
Correct. That's why we don't host out there. Normal practice, they finish by 6. So the lights aren't really needed for practice for tennis.
Oh, okay.
But when we host a tournament, that's why we don't host them at the middle schools, because they're not lit.
Thank you.
That'd be great if they all have lights.
So that amount, Coach, that says for Barrientos, 188,900, that's how much it would cost to light all 4, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Estrada, to
Yes.
light all 6 at Biel Garza, 276, at Hartwell, 179, and at Longoria, 202.
That's correct.
Mr. Lima, is there any way that ESSER funds could possibly pay for, no?
I
Okay,
don't
thank
think
you.
so.
That answers my question. Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Dr. Salinas, do you have an opinion on?
I do. You know, my concern, in addition to the UIL, you know, the access to the community. I know that in McAllen High School, if you go out there to walk at their track, at night, there's a lot of activity in their tennis courts from the community playing tennis. I would like to refurbish South Middle School to serve the community on this side of town, and Barrientos Middle School to serve the community on the other side of town, and then open up those high schools that have lights. I think Bella, being the only high school without lights, I think there needs to be some equity there, and open up those courts. We're not being used by UIL for our community to go and play tennis for the community.
So you're suggesting that we add 2 other middle schools?
Yes, but South already has them, but it needs the lights.
Yeah, they need replacement.
They need to be replaced, and we can
Because
serve
they're
this.
used to day and
Yes.
night.
And they say South in Barrientos because they get access right off the road for the community to go and play tennis. And then Bella is the only high school without lights, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they need to have lights.
Yeah, they should.
Okay.
And they're on the east side of town.
Mr. Garza, how do you feel about that?
Well, and right now everything's secured, so really community couldn't use it till 5:30, 6 o'clock, where the community can't use them because there's no lights. So it's
Right.
kind of twofold. The other concern is we don't have bathroom accessibility out there. So they come in and practice or play and then leave. But right now, I just had two retired people from the park come over upset that they couldn't get onto our tennis courts during the day. I said, the only one you can is Backer Park, which is lit, and or the city one, which is a city and Travis. Those are the only public courts, but of course they're not cupped very well. So they had a little argument that the city proposes that there's 14 tennis courts in the city, but they can't use them at any time during the day other than the 2 parks, because we secure those facilities, even the Backer Park, during the day, and then they're not lit at night, so therefore they're not being used by the community or utilized by the community. So if we can light them all, the community would have advantage and our kids could practice longer. Definitely.
So you're saying all,
If we
Okay,
can, it
no,
will
that-
facilitate not only us, maybe we'll be able to host matches, dual matches, which right now we don't do at the middle school. We only do that at the high schools, where they could host there, and it's less transportation of having to get the kids to the high schools and all that. We could actually host, just move one school in and play there, but they have lights, and they do need lights to be able to finish the matches.
So Coach Garza and Mr. Estrada, let me ask you something. At South, as Dr. Salinas is recommending that we, relight those lights and fix it up again, is only ECISD students allowed to use that court, or have we opened it up and the city, I mean, Edinburgh is allowed to use it. Do we have an agreement with them?
Right
What
now,
is the agreement, Coach?
South is the only place that we have an individual that used to work through the city and us and use our facility.
Yes,
He does lessons and then he does tournaments free of charge for some of our ECISD students. So that's the understanding we have. But right now, that's the only facility that's full blown till 8, 9 o'clock at night with lights and
with the
full
city.
access
So
after
the
school.
city can come in and use, we have that agreement.
Yes, ma'am.
Because at the end of the day, there
Yes, ma'am.
are.
The only ones that we haven't allowed is some idea teams wanted to come and use our facility. We told them no.
Okay.
But we do have that program
Agreement.
that
There's an
happens
agreement.
at South on a daily basis. Yes,
All
ma'am.
right.
He's running about 30, 40 individuals after school, like he'll camp all year long. And then he hosts 2 or 3 tournaments and lets some of our ECISD kids in for free.
All right.
That's part of the
Jocelyn, can I
understanding we
a
have for
copy
him to
of
use
that
our
agreement,
facility.
please?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'd like a copy. I'd like to see that agreement, please. Thank you. Thank you, Coach
Yes,
Garza.
ma'am.
That's all for me, Ms. Gonzalez.
But the agreements can always be modified or changed
Good.
if we're going to have more access in the other. But this is a sport that has been neglected for many
Yes, it has.
years. And I think it's time that we consider, we're going to do it for whatever reason with 1 or 2 middle schools. I think we owe it to the other schools to do the same.
I agree.
If we can find the money for 2, I think we can find the money for the others. I think it's a sport that has been neglected, and I know I hear from parents saying it's all football, nothing else. Just like we're looking at what we're doing with swimming, which is also a sport that has been neglected. I think we need to take the same position with the lights.
One of the things about this sport, Ms. Gonzalez, to your point, is this is a sport that people use into the 60s, into the 70s.
Yes.
Yes.
And I also think that we should, especially at Hartwell and Longoria, because Hartwell, it's, even if we wanted to be in that sports, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, let's say, just to practice, and there's a huge student population there. And then we have Avila Elementary also right next door.
Yes, ma'am.
So they wouldn't have to get in a car and come all the way over here. And I think that that would be feasible. And the same goes for Longoria Middle School. Longoria Middle School is behind my house, and that's far out there. And so I agree with Ms. Gonzalez that that some recommendations should come to us to do some at those schools also, so that we can start spreading some of the fairness.
How about Bella?
Well, sure.
Vela is no question about Vela. Yeah.
The courts that are being recommended, the 5 for Edinburgh High, the 4 for North, the 4 for Economides, and the 4 for Vela. Of course, this is going to come to the board. That should be a given. But the ones that have zeros, I think that yourself, Dr. Salinas, and administration should figure out, at least to start, like Memorial with 2, give them something instead of a 0.
We will come up for the next board meeting with a recommendation on some relief for some of these campuses that are far out into the.
It's only fair. It's only fair.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
I move to bring this item to the board with the adjustments that have been discussed.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Come to the agenda item at the next board meeting. Item 6, discussion of the interlocal bid by replacing the athletic field lights at Edinburgh North, Economides, baseball, and softball as presented by administration.
This item is going to be presented by Carlos Lima.
Yeah, so this particular item is for a lighting retrofit project, as you mentioned, on baseball fields at Econ, softball field at Econ, and also baseball field at Edinburgh North. The original discussion that we had is that due to the age of the system and due to the ongoing problems and repairs, it was decided to start looking for an actual cost for replacement of the lightings of the lights. The original estimates, they came down to about $710,000. And the overall estimate, including the engineering fees, was originally at $759,700. And we received approval from the board to go and do a design on these campuses to get an actual co-op quote. And the selected product was Moscow lighting. So that's what we did. We went out and did the design for these 3 fields. And the estimate, the actual pricing is on the following slide. The total pricing is the same scope, the 3 fields. It's at $782,000, 705. The difference from the estimate to the actual cooperative bid is about $23,000. And we're bringing this to the facilities first for discussion and potential approval of budget and to continue moving forward with this project.
Okay, let's go back in time. So does this tell me that the problem that was brought to the attention of the administration several months ago, and we were told that they were going to be ready for softball, they still don't have the lights, so they won't be able to play in their field this year again? Is that correct?
That is correct. The project, from the moment that we get a PO to the company, which is Moscow, we decide to move forward, is a 15-week project.
No, Ms. Gonzalez, they will be able to play in their field, but not with this new lighting. We made they replaced some light that were defective to.
We have a local Lumatech, which has been doing the repairs as they come up. They were already on campus the other day. They've got all the equipment in. They're starting to put them up. I think it's replace any lights. We even added 3 more lights at EHS baseball. They're just getting ready, so we asked them to check. So now they're also, part of their scope of work is to increase three lights that are out at baseball at EHS also. But they already have been on site. They've already looked at everything. They got their equipment in. So we're hoping that we could get it done before softball started last week, but they're there already and they shouldn't take long because it's not a lot of lights that are out, but we are replacing all those lights until we be able to do the whole job. And it said some are missing at North, softball and baseball at Econ, and now 3 more lights are missing at EHS baseball.
The only difference is that those lights at Economias have been.
Excuse me, I'm sorry?
The only difference is that those lights at Economias have not been operational for at least 2 years.
There are. We had them checked, and there's some that are missing, but those are the ones that we're replacing. I don't think it requires, we had done before a lot of infrastructure as far as the cabling and all that was done wrong and all that. And that's what we did last year. That's what we've been spending $50,000, $60,000 annually to just keep them up to speed.
And every year you
Yes,
spend
ma'am.
the same amount.
We're spending
That's
that.
why we were talking about replacing it, but we were
Yeah,
told.
it's just Band-Aids, should I say, to just get by the season. And that's why now with Musco, which is the majority of all our lights in our district are all Musco, these particular light systems are not.
So this project, we don't have monies for, is that what you're telling us, Mr. Lima?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So there's no budget for this item?
No, ma'am, this is not a capital budget. So what we're looking for is if you decide to move forward, you will have to approve also budget for this project. We don't have budget right now.
So in November or October, when we approved the engineers, we only approved the engineers to do the engineering required to replace the lighting?
Back in November, that is correct. We got the approval of the engineering, which was Trinity Engineer. and the cost for the engineering to design this. That was approved a couple of months ago.
And the project was bidded out based on those construction documents, and these are the bids that came in from those?
That is correct. These are no longer estimates. This is actually a bid based on a design package on the lighting for the 3 fields.
Dr. Salinas, do we have this kind of money?
Ms. Gonzalez, since we are spending significant good money after bad every year, I think we need to find the money to have these fields, these lights replaced, and stop spending big dollars every year to get them fixed.
Summer, yeah. That was a whole concern when we started.
We can find the money.
You can find the money?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we bring this item to the board at the next board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, update on the ESSER HVAC improvement project presented by administration.
Yes, these projects, Ms. Gonzalez, are going to be presented by the project managers, SDI Engineering and Broadus and Associates.
Good evening, committee members. Carlos Del Angel with Brownstone, subconsultant to Broadus and Associates. We also have Grady Deaton on the line. He couldn't make it because he's quarantined right now because his wife came down with COVID, but he is available via the virtual meeting link. So I'd like to start just with a little executive summary.
Excuse me, Madam President, is there a packet that I can follow?
I'm sorry.
Or,
Yes, there is. There's the extra one right there.
thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. So just a little project background, executive summary. The team of Broadus and Associates and Brownstone was contracted back in November to oversee a portion of the ESSER 3 program. And specifically, we were assigned the projects that were under Half and Associates and Sigma Engineering. So the total program budget that was assigned to us to manage was $25,667,119. And those funds, per the rules of ESSERS, must be committed by that September 30th, 2024 date. So both Half and Sigma have been directed by ECISD facilities and also us to break their programs into 2 distinct phases, phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 projects are listed below, and those are the ones that we're really going to focus on for today's presentation. Half and Associates has the Edinburgh North High School, South Middle School, and Lee Elementary in their phase 1 program. And Sigma has Economides, Longoria Middle School, Esparza Elementary, and Escandon. Currently, Broadus is conducting a market analysis. We're just making sure that current market pricing is in alignment with everything that's being designed for the phase 1 projects so that we can ensure that we're going to have what we have for phase 2 and then assign those scopes to the phase 2 projects and the engineers. So next I'm going to get into the specific scopes of work for each individual campus, starting with the Half projects. Edinburgh North High School, new zone controls and hardware at the zone level, but the VAV boxes to remain, and the actuators that will be controlled by those zone controls and hardware will be replaced. Exhaust fans will also be replaced. The chillers, the cooling towers, and the tower pumps will remain. And the chiller pumps, both the primary and the secondary, if I'm not mistaken, will be replaced as well. Selected AHUs and DX units will also be replaced, and the chilled water pipe will be replaced to the Fine Arts Building, as we think that there's a leak in that pipe. Moving on, South Middle School, also under half, the air handling units are to remain at the academic building, the band hall, and the gymnasium. There is a return air issue right now that will need to be rectified. It's a life safety issue. The return air is being funneled into the hallways. That's not allowed by code. So with this program, we're going to reroute that return air to make sure that we're code compliant. Existing chillers will remain. The replacement of the chiller pumps, the drives for both the chilled and the hot water, and the cooling towers will also be replaced.
I have a question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Carlos, when these recommendations are made, do you agree with all these recommendations?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The mic's off.
Yes, sir. We agree to all the recommendations. As a matter of fact, the scope was developed with the feedback from the group, including Mr. Science, Feliciano Ramirez, and myself, where we're changing only what is truly necessary, that is in poor shape and due to age and just conditions. So we have spent a considerable amount doing the assessment for every campus, equipment by equipment, and this has been what we consider as a priority.
Thank you.
The condenser pumps and the existing boiler will remain here at South Middle School. The hot water lines and pumps are going to be replaced. All controls will remain, and the exhaust fans will also remain at South Middle School. The last school in phase one for half is Lee Elementary. A little bit of a more simple scope on this one. All AC units except for the gymnasium units, which I believe are newer, will be replaced. All exhaust fans will remain, and then we will be replacing the controls for all the new units as well. Next are the Sigma projects, starting with Economides High School. We'll be replacing 2 cooling towers and 4 pumps at this location, as well as 16 water rooftop units, and then all the outdoor ducts that's associated with those units. We'll be adding BPI to 16 units at the high school and 6 BPI units at the Performing Arts Center. New controllers, valves, wiring, graphics, and programming for the new equipment and interface with the existing controls at the high school and Performing Arts Center as well. And we'll be replacing 1 air-cooled chiller, 5 chilled rooftop units at the Performing Arts Center. Next, Longoria. Replacing 2 air-cooled screw chillers with scroll chillers. Replace 1 Pony air-cooled scroll chiller. The replacement of 2 chilled rooftop air handlers. We'll be adding BPIs here as well to 20 units. And then also new controllers, valves, wiring, and interface with the existing controls. At Esparza Elementary, replacing 21 chilled water rooftop air handlers, 3 DOA chilled water rooftop air handlers as well, 4 package DX rooftop units, which are the split system. We'll be replacing 2 fan coil units, adding 21 VAV single duct boxes and CO2 sensors for the demand control ventilation. And then again, new controllers, valves, wiring, graphics, programming, and interface with the existing controls. And then also be adding adding BPI to 33 units.
Oh.
And last but not least, Escandon Elementary, replacing 4 package DX units, replacing 1 split DX unit with a package DX rooftop unit in the kitchen, replacing 44 of the split DX systems in AC closets, adding a new BAS direct digital control system, and we'll be adding BPI to 49 units at this elementary school. Next, financial update. So as I mentioned on the first slide in the executive summary, the allocated amount was a little over 25 million. That was broken up between the two engineers, 13,550,430 allocated to half, and then 12,116,689 allocated to Sigma. These figures that you see up on the screen right now, these are all in figures. So these include the construction costs, the engineering fees associated with this, and then also the fees that are used to pay Broadus and Associates as well. Next slide, please. So here we're looking at the half phase one construction cost estimates. So just a little bit different because now these are specific to construction only and how they associate with each different campus. So you can see on the table before you, you've got three columns, your campus, your system age, which Mr. Lima was referring to earlier, and then the engineer's estimates for the scope of work that was discussed for each respective campus. So first, Edinburgh North High School, system age 30 years. You can see it's almost 4.8 million in engineer's estimate. Next, we have South Middle School, system age 20 years, 3.2 million is the engineer's estimate. And then Lee, 18-year system age, you can see 600,000, bringing the total phase one budget for Half and Associates to just over 8.6 million. Right now, we're verifying these estimates with the current market conditions to make sure that they're accurate. That's all in line. We should have about 3.75 million left for phase two. And again, we'll work with ECISD to develop those scopes and work with Half and Associates to see how we allocate those funds to the different campuses in phase two. The next slide is exactly the same as the one previously, but now for Sigma. And you can see their four campuses, Economides, 17 years, 3.4 million, the engineer's estimate for the scope provided. Longoria Middle School, 11, 1.76 million. Esparza, 18-year system age, 1.62 million. And Escandon Elementary School, 14 years old, 2.1 million. Total phase one budget for Sigma, 8.9, leaves a balance of just over 2.1 that again, we will verify and scope out for the phase two projects for Sigma as well. Next slide is just some major project milestones. So both Half and Sigma right now are working diligently to complete their construction documents, which include the plans and specifications. We've spoken to both engineers and we're looking at a target finish date of the end of March to have their construction documents complete. 3/28 is what we're shooting for. We have left some time between their target finish date and the acceptance of ECISD of those plans at the board, the final bid packet. And that's to give us some time just to review the plans, do a technical peer review on them, make sure if there's any comments that we have along with the staff, ECISD staff, that those get incorporated and that we ensure also that all the front end documents that are prepared by the procurement department, make sure that they meet all the ESSER requirements with all the legal language that's in there. So we're hoping to get that board approval 4/25, then receive bids and proposals in June, hopefully have contractors selected and issuing notice to proceed in early July. I'll pause there just in case there's any questions, because I know that's probably a big slide.
So the contractors would be contracted when?
We're hoping to put this out to bid it would be the end of April. And we're hoping to receive bids from contractors that first week of June, which is 6/2.
And when would you finish the project, the construction?
That timeline we don't have yet, Dr. Salinas. In a later slide, I'll talk about some project constraints that we're looking at. One of the big things that we're looking at right now is lead times for a lot of this mechanical equipment that varies, from 4 months to 8 months, just depending on what you order. So we're going to work closely with whatever contractor we have on board, the engineers and obviously your staff, to ensure we have mitigation strategies in place to try to minimize that amount of lead time as much. But it's very hard right now to give an end date to construction without knowing how long some of that equipment is going to take.
And the reason I ask her is because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lima, the federal government gave us a window to finish this work.
Yeah, it's our understanding that the funds need to be committed by September 30th of 2024, if I'm not mistaken, for these ESSER 3 program funds. So yeah, we are aware and working towards that target, sir.
And if I may,
Go ahead.
Mr. Leanda, looking at some of these things, the pumps, the valves, wiring, and I know that I've said continuously at many of our facility meetings that supply is very, very limited, very limited. So as far as, and it's been all over the newspaper, it's all over the news, especially
Yes,
during the holiday season where they said everything was stuck in port. And if you got whatever was there, you had to hurry up and get it because by the time you went back, even the next day, everything was gone. So how are you as your company, how are you doing to get on the list to get that next supply, that pump, that valve? I'm sure that they're not in abundance everywhere. Correct?
So, yes, ma'am, you're absolutely 100% correct. And so one of the mitigation strategies is working with the engineers to make sure that we have acceptable equals, right? So that if we can't find something, we can replace it with something else. Another mitigation strategy that's been discussed, and once we get contractors on board, is to do a basis of design order. So you don't skip the submittal process, but you kind of work off just what the plans and specifications say in order to order your equipment right at the beginning of the project. So those risks for supply chain issues are being addressed, and we are looking at mitigation strategies. We haven't landed on one yet, but we definitely have strategies in place that if something is not readily available, how are we going to react and handle that?
So in working with your team, do you all have met and are working on an action plan to be ready to meet that deadline of 2024?
Yes, ma'am. We're working on that schedule, and as we develop more with the engineers, we will fine tune that schedule, and we can definitely present it to the board. I would say probably in about a month that we'll have some more definitive dates.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Ms. Gonzalez.
But what you're showing, this schedule that you're showing us that goes through June the 2nd of 2022, you're not, at this point, you haven't ordered anything, right?
No, ma'am, that's correct. We have not ordered anything.
And you're waiting for, okay, at what point do you hire the contractors?
Well, hopefully right after we receive bids on 6/2, we hope to award the projects immediately. And as long as, a couple of weeks, we hope to have contractors on board. So I would say end of June would be a realistic date.
How many contractors do you anticipate that we're going to need for this project?
So there's been some discussion on that as well. If we are going to break it out and bid it by campus, which our recommendation has been to not do that and to actually group them by engineer. So we would bid all the half projects together and we would have single point of contact for all those projects, and then work collectively with the engineer and one contractor, and then the same thing for the Sigma projects. That has been our recommendation. That has not been decided yet. So we're still having discussions on how these projects are going to be bid. So there could, I guess to answer the question easy, there could be 2, there could be 7.
And as you move along that way, Mr. Landa, you have those goals and expectations that you're going to tell these contractors that we will be under the gun to meet this deadline.
Absolutely.
In 2024. If not,
Absolutely.
We're going to lose that money.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all I have, Ms. Gonzalez.
I think I have a couple more
I
slides.
think Mike wants to say
Oh,
something.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Oh, okay, yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Your targeted finish date, is that for phase 1 and phase 2?
Yes, sir. Right now, that's for both phases.
Okay. I see that you gave a specific number for phase 1. Do you have any idea the cost of phase 2?
Well, the cost of phase 2 is going to be based on the balance that was presented in those. So
No, that's not the cost of it. That's what you're going to have left over. Have you assessed the cost?
no, we're finalizing scopes right now.
Because you understand the difference.
Yes,
The
sir.
difference is you are very specific on phase 1 and you have nothing on phase 2,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
You have nothing to show us on phase 2.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's a wish list. You use the money on phase 1, whatever's left, you're going to hope completes what is needed in phase 2.
Yeah, we are doing an exercise right now, verifying those budgets, which we should have complete in about
Okay.
2 weeks. And then once we have those, we'll develop the
Okay.
scopes for the phase 2.
Well, one thing that we experienced in the CTE when we did our build out was unexpected budget increases. Have you taken those into consideration?
We have, but again, we are doing the verification right now as we speak, and that's to hopefully capture the increases that we experienced at the turn of the year, at
Okay.
January 1st.
It's just because if you don't have the specifics of phase 2, it's hard to put a price on it. We just can't blindly go and say, well, whatever's left on after phase 1, hopefully we can cover phase 2. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we'd like a more detailed look at what we're expecting on phase 2, so we don't have surprises like we experienced in our last CTE project, which was 35% over budget. And here we're talking a large amount of money. To be 30% over budget is a lot of money that we're not looking into spending. And that's why these meetings are so important, that we get specific numbers. Now, as far as meeting together with the engineers, how many meetings have you had with them?
Multiple, 10.
Okay.
Several. We've met several times with the engineers, twice last week. I've met with them this morning.
And have you verified the information that they've given you, or are you going by the information they gave you?
We are in the process right now of doing budget verification. So we're taking the engineers' estimates that were provided to us, and we're making sure that those align with what the market is saying right now.
Okay. So what you're presenting right now, you still haven't verified with the engineers?
What we're presenting right now are the engineers' estimates.
I know, but have you verified?
Those have not been, no, those have not been
Okay,
verified.
so you don't know for sure if that's the cost?
Yeah, we won't know for sure until we put them out to bid, but
Well,
yes, we haven't verified them.
Well, I understand they're going out to bid, but verifying what is given to you, you could get that right now by just looking to see what the market is right now. You're not going blindly by what the engineers are telling you. You're verifying what the engineers are telling you. And what I want to make sure is you're telling me you haven't verified what the engineers gave you.
Correct. We just got the plans to a certain point where we could start that verification. And so that process is going.
Okay, wait, it just, I know that Ms. Gonzalez and Isela, we didn't like the surprises we got in our last one.
Yeah.
So we don't want a surprise. You know, it's your job to make sure that you manage a project and you don't come with us with surprises, because we're going to be very upset if they come with surprises where all of a sudden from one day to another, it's an increase of 30%. And that's something that we want to make sure we don't experience again. So
Yes, sir.
with the verification, we've got to make sure we're dealing with reality, because the next time we see you, we really don't want surprises. We really don't. And because we're at a strict budget, and we just can't be pulling money out of everywhere for things that we don't expect. So I just want to make sure that we get concrete information and verification. I understand when you go out for bid, but you can verify what they tell you.
Yes, sir. Understood. And we don't want surprises, you know, any more than you do. And so as soon as we have those verified numbers, we can come give another presentation to the board just to make sure that those do align. And at that point, if it all does align, we should have the scope 2 defined as well, so we can talk about that in more specifics.
Very good. Thank you.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Gonzalez.
So just some ongoing tasks like we discussed, coordination continues with both the engineers and ECISD staff, finalizing the scope of work for the half phase 2 projects, continued progress on the construction documents and specifications by both HAF and Sigma, and then verifying the budgets against the current market conditions, as well as conducting a technical plan review concurrently just to make sure that there's no errors and omissions. The last slide is just talking about some project constraints or risks that we've kind of discussed already in the back and forth discussion. Obviously, COVID-19 continues to be something that affects all our projects, and none of these constraints work in a vacuum. They all kind of interblend with each other. We talked about lead times due to supply chain delays, construction cost escalation, like you were mentioning, Mr. Farias, which is 20% on certain things since the start of the pandemic. Hopefully we can account for those so there is no surprises. And then something else that's very real that we're going to have to deal with is labor shortages. Right now there's a lot of work that's flooding the market, and getting skilled labor is going to be something that we will contend with when we put these out to bid. That's all I had for tonight, so I'll just open it up to see if there's any more questions at this time.
Dr. Salinas, who from the administration will be working with these specifics with them, so that we know as soon as we can that that you or your administration or your designee has been involved in agreeing with what is being put before us before we come?
The primary point of contact for us is Carlos Lima, and we assigned the secretary to 100% to this project to help him. And then Anthony as well will be, as well as the communication point. And I personally talk to them frequently regarding these 2 projects, considering the volume, the amount of money we're investing and the time frame that we're dealing with.
This is a big one. We can't mess it up.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Gonzalez, if I may, you are correct. This is the largest project we're dealing with. Well, since I've been on the board, this is the largest one. And my recommendation is all hands on deck. The more eyes, the better. And I know that Dr. Garza holds that position, and I would like for him to
Take the lead.
show up to the meetings, because that's so important. And the other importance is we can't make a mistake here because of federal funding and how meticulous it is. It's so important. And we also have a time, a deadline. So we've got 2 different things. We got compliance and a deadline to deal with.
I have asked also our new director for compliance, Esther Compliance, Ron Cavazos, to get heavily involved on the compliance aspect of this project as well.
And if I may, I agree with Ms. Gonzalez and Mr. Farias, that if we're going to be successful in this and everything we do with this money and a timeline, then we also must put our part as a district to give them key people so that they're available to meet with them on a as needed basis. So we keep those lines of communication open and we're going forward with these projects so that we also know that there are some lead people here assisting you all and you're not out there just on your own. So we have to make that bond and be together so that you're able to call them. And yes, I think it's really important, Mr. Farias, that Dr. Salinas, the assistant superintendent for facilities, be the key person with Mr. Cavazos and of course, Mr. Limas. Thank you.
Ms. Gonzalez, if I just would like to make it clear, would Dr. Garza be our point person, the point person that will be getting all the information, or who exactly will you put in that position to be the point of contact?
The point is Carlos. He's trained professionally as a mechanical engineer. The communication between Carlos and, I mean, this is a big project for Dr. Garza, a big one. So it is for Dr. Ron Cavazos. And then of course, I'm the superintendent, I'm ultimately responsible. So I also need to be very involved with this as well.
Okay. I just as Ms. Vela and Ms. Gonzalez stated, that this is a very, very big project.
Yes.
And we just got to make sure that, I mean, all hands on deck to make sure that, again, we don't have surprises. And as a board, we vote on decisions based on the information that's given to us. And we just want to make sure that's accurate and, accurate information. So, so the point of contact for the record would be Mr. Limas?
Yes. Yes. Okay. He'll know the details of this project more so than anybody on our staff.
And just as a word of caution, if and when you begin to see something negative in terms of what you are projecting, don't hesitate to advise Dr. Salinas that we are facing a problem. I don't want to show up to a meeting like we did with the Cape project and find out that we're in the hole $5 million. I want to know, as soon as you know, we need to know.
Yes, ma'am.
And feel free to come and share it with him so that he can inform us, so that whatever it is, it's an issue that we need to take care of immediately and not, we were going to tell you, but it's been 6 weeks. So immediately feel that you have that open door communication, and Dr. Salinas is always here and available at all times, so that Ms. Gonzalez is correct, so that we know where we're headed.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay, go ahead. Is there?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Good evening, board and committee members, Dr. Salinas and staff. My name is Isael Posadas. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Rebecca Morrison with SDI Engineering. Also on our team is, as a technical advisor, is Trinity Engineering. They're not here tonight, but they've been to every meeting we've held with our engineers. Tonight's presentation I've got for you Basically deals in 3 items. Budget, because that's what drove our scope, and the plan of action to get us within budget, and then finally schedule. So those are the 3 key points. And based on the questions, hopefully we touch on the items that interest you the most. So if we could, the project's overview, and I'll start with money. This is not an easy project to explain because it's got a lot of campuses. We've got 3 different engineers, and then we're also split with another, with the school district, trying to help them with the other projects that they've got. The scheduling is gonna be a complicated thing, but first, starting with budget. On the top right, you'll see we've got our construction budget of $31,299,000. That is just construction. What we've done is broken this slide into 3 different columns. We've got the Ethos, that's a consulting firm, one of the engineers, DBR, and MEP Solutions. And I want to put them side by side with the schools that each of them represent. So for Ethos, we did the same thing. We're split up between phase 1 and phase 2 schools. Phase 1 schools are the ones that have the most need. Phase 2 schools are identified as those that have some needs, but because of over the time, their age, projects that have been ongoing over the years aren't as needed as the phase 1. But one thing I'll turn your attention, Ethos, for instance, has $7.9 million in their budget. The phase 1 schools is $9,200,000. Phase 2 schools is $3,300,000. So as you can see, there's an estimated cost in the third one there. I wish I could point to it for you. Is it 12 million? You could point at it. Yeah, 12,549,000. So as you can see, just with the Ethos group, all these campuses here, Eisenhower, Flores, Jefferson, and phase 2, Hargill, Johnson, McGee, Harwell, Flores, and Edinburgh Academy, we've got a deficit already of 4,600,950. So those are actually vetted numbers. We went through the scopes in phase 1 and phase 2 to get to those numbers. After I'm done telling you about, what we have here, I'm going to talk about a plan of action under scope on how we're going to address that or how we're going to deal with that. DBR, for instance, had $9,799,000. The phase 1 estimates that have been vetted, $8,140,000, and then phase 2, $1,503,000. The total estimated cost of $9,704,000. In this case, we've got a surplus of $155,000. In the MEP Solutions, we've got a phase 1 estimate of $8,616,000, phase 2, $3,270,000 for a total of $11,886,000. That has now a deficit of $3,030,000. This is based on the original needs of the campuses. This is getting everything that the school district had originally wished for. After vetting them, after going through in great detail with your staff and detail with our consultant in conjunction with our with the consultants that are in each of these projects, these are the numbers that we came up with. But one thing I'll let you know is when Ethos, DBR, and MEP Solutions, you take their 7.9, 9.7, and 8.8, that doesn't total to the $31 million. The reason is we have built in a 15% contingency. We call it a contingency, but it's really to address the big unknown. We don't know what the market's gonna dictate to us this upcoming year when we're out for bid. So we decided to go, we actually analyzed a 10%, a 15%, and a 20% contingency. We decided to go with a 15% just so that we are safe in the scope that we give our engineers. We obviously, if we've got a deficit of $6 million or $7 million here, obviously we don't want to design $7 million over and then try to figure out a way to reduce the scope or reduce the quality or do some sort of, our approach is we're going to give you 85% of the budget, design 85% for all these campuses, whatever you need to do for 85%. And that contingency, we're going to use it toward alternates. In case we get lucky and we're able to see some savings or not have to spend that 15%, we can now have a scope for using that funding. So we don't want to waste any time. So they've got a base bid with some alternates. And I'll explain that a little bit, hopefully easier in these slides that are going to be coming up. So I'll go to the next one. What we have done in order for us to vet these numbers and get you to make us feel comfortable about what was there, the school district awarded this, the engineers back in May of 2021. We didn't come in until November. Of course, knowing that we were already behind the time, in October, before our contract was, after we were actually awarded, we started our meetings, preliminary meetings with the school district and the engineers. We've had a total of about 14 or 15 meetings, not only weekly meetings since the start of us addressing all this. One, to find out where they were, what they did in evaluating the campuses from the very beginning. And we vetted all of their numbers, not only phase one, but phase two. We vetted them not only with Mr. Lima, who was an integral part of this, but also with Mr. Feliciano Ramirez. He's your HVAC foreman. Matter of fact, you have a very talented HVAC foreman. He's been here a number of years. He could, by memory, without looking at notes, tell us when he replaced a certain unit, when he was up in the roof. He remembers when things broke and had to replace them. And, it's just phenomenal what the wealth of information that your staff was able to share with us. But he didn't just share it with us, he shared it with the consultants. We made sure that the consultants were there present, all three of them, because we went over the scopes for every campus. For instance, you may have two sister schools, and we wanted to compare them. We said, these two schools were built around the same time, same design, so why aren't we having the same estimates for both? Well, it turns out the reason is the HVAC systems in one school may have been different than the other school. Some of the schools may have had their units replaced. Some of the controls may have been replaced. So there was a lot of detail, a lot of back and forth between the staff and us and our consultant. We have our own sub-consultant, Trinity, to help us guide us through some of the technical stuff, and your staff was a part of it from the very beginning, and it was a wealth of information. So what we did after we found out, the things that they needed, we went through and we said, well, this is a big animal. We know we've got a lot of needs. We don't have the money. If we had $100 million, maybe we'd be able to get everything done, but we don't. We've got our limitations. So what we did in order for us to determine how best to utilize the funding, we went and did a mechanical assessment worksheet for every campus. And this is a sample of actually we have them all here, but Eisenhower Elementary, we ranked them between poor, fair, the age of the units, the capacity. And then once we had the capacity, we broke it down by cost per ton or cost by appropriate factor. And then we went back and forth to make sure that, one consultant wasn't overly ambitious and thinking that we could afford it, same pricing as a year ago. Between all three consultants, it was a collaborative effort for all three engineers that are designing this, design professionals, to come together and form a consensus on what they thought, because each of them bring different experiences in the marketplace, different experiences in construction in the Valley and all across the state, actually. So, and a lot of them, they could pick up the phone and call Train. They could pick up the phone and call Carrier. They could pick up the phone and call, the local contractors, find out what they anticipate, what they're thinking. So we used all that information to together come up with the estimated cost, not only for the phase one, but also for the phase two. We completed that right before the new year and actually issued, so there's Jefferson, Vela, and this is an example. So Ethos, for instance, we went through that exercise, and at the end, we gave them a detailed scope. This is a sample of the detailed scope. I won't pretend to know what all the acronyms are, although Dr. Morrison did give me a cheat sheet, but I won't bother you with that. But what we did here is give them specific duties, specific things that needed to be done based on the needs of every single campus. So, and then we gave them what the scope would be in the phase two. So DVR, for instance, we went through, there were some things that we agreed with, some things we disagreed with between our consultant and them. And in the end, we formed a consensus, like I said. We did it for all the different campuses, all the different elementaries, the Memorial Middle School, and Edinburgh High School. And again, DVR got their own customized scope based on that campus's needs, how old those units are, and what needed to be done. For instance, the controls. obviously we needed to make sure that if it's a certain type of unit, that the controls that were existing that may have been replaced within a year or so, that maybe whatever they're designing is going to fit with those controls. Otherwise, you know, you got another $100,000 you'd be spending. We were really trying to target every campus for the most efficient way to address its needs. So go on to the next one. We did the same exercise for MEP Solutions. That's another engineering firm for Brewster, Montecristo, Barrientos, and BL Garza, and gave them their own detailed scope per campus. And then, so, you know, you saw the deficit that we had at the very beginning. So what are we doing? How are we addressing it? What is the approach that we're taking? We have a proposed plan of action to address it. For instance, let's just start with Ethos. For instance, they have $7.9 million. This takes into account the contingency taken out of it. So we defined a scope of work that could be afforded based on their poor, all of the poor stuff. Let's make sure we can fix all the phase one poor condition items. And that's $6.8 million. And then we said, well, if we address the poor under the phase one, well, what do we do with the rest of the campuses? If we're not able to afford, you know, replacing units, you know, if we spend the money on one more campus, then we have no money for anyone else. So what we did is we got an estimate for bipolar ionization for all the campuses we didn't think we could afford. So at least every campus is able to get some sort of upgrade, anything. You know, you may not need to replace their unit because it's only 2 years old or 3 years old, but we're still doing something to improve air quality there. So at the end there, we have, in this particular case, we were looking at bipolar ionization for the rest of the facilities. Subtotal of $7.1 million is the estimate. So what happens? We have a net difference of $842,000. But what we do here, though, is we say, well, let's assume, you know, we're already covering the bad stuff. Go ahead and click again. You take that and you add the contingency, we have $2.2 million left over, which we could possibly use to address the fare. So we are planning and having a design for addressing the things that we wanted that were in fair condition, but we're doing those as alternates. And the reason we want to do that is because we don't want to spend all our money and then find out that, you know, we designed something that can't be added or removed without removing something else out of the items that were poor. You know, so these are being done independently. If it turns out we have the money, we don't have to wait. We'll just add on, but we will have bid it. We will have taken advantage of a larger project, hopefully economies of scale. And possibly if the world was perfect and the estimates were still conservative enough, you know, we'd have some money to go toward the fare. So you take that, you add back the contingency, and we're looking at a deficit for their firm about $156,000. That's manageable. We can still add or subtract a few items. DBR, for instance, had $9,799,000. We had a defined scope under phase one of $6.4 million. We're looking, in this particular case, they do have enough money based on the phase two scope of work of $1.5 million. Those are vetted numbers. The total comes out to $7.9 million. You take the 1.8 million difference, you know, the savings that we have there, add the contingency, and we would, in a perfect world, have $3,534,000, which we could use toward the fare as alternates, and we'd still, in this particular case, be in the black $1.8 million. And again, we've addressed the most critical schools, or the schools that have the greatest need here. And then MEP Solutions, we have $8,856,000. We defined scope of the poor of $8,504,000. In this particular case, we can't afford much more, so we said, what's the cost for doing bipolar ionization? $300,000 for those remaining campuses under phase two. The total is $8.8 million. We have a savings of $52,000. Add back the contingency, and we have available about $1.6 million that we can use toward the targeted fare or the alternates. In this particular case, we've got about $1.5 million in the black. So you add those together, and this is the approach that we've taken to try to to try to maximize our monies, clearly define the scopes, and let's not over-design something we already know we can't afford. Let's design something that we want in the way we want to, the way we want to address it, and take advantage of the funding we have. The next slide. So the schedule, so that drives the schedule. That is the great unknown, right, for all of us. So we have a fairly detailed schedule. It's important that we know all the milestones, so when we want to do certain things, but I'm going to skip this one and go to the next one because one, I can't see that well here, but this one tells you exactly what the way we want to do this. So what we did is we took the schools and we vetted with our consultant and these engineers how long their work, based on the specific scope, how long it would take for them to complete the project. So on the left, you have the firm, you have the school, and we prioritized them. For instance, we prioritized them based on need and long lead times. Some of the things that we're doing that take a year is because these are long lead items, meaning it takes a long time to order them, have it manufactured. It's not something that's on a shelf somewhere. It has to be custom manufactured. And so we think the earlier we start the bidding process for those, the better we are going to be able to manage the timing. So for instance, if you look, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 projects would be bid March of this year, March 2022. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, April 2022, and then the last 4 is going to be in May 2022. These are our projected dates for bidding based on the engineers providing us when they can have CDs or construction documents available, and based on the fact that some of these are, for instance, easier to work on, we're going to have to stagger them. We're going to have to stagger them because in some cases we can't work but in the summer. In some cases we can't work without displacing students. In some cases we may have to displace students into portables possibly in order for us to do some of the work there. Some of the projects are more complicated than others. So we factored all of those things in conjunction with your staff and knowing the school district the way we do, your testing times, your needs at the campuses, your summer schools, all of those things, we factored those in. The very next step after this is a true roadmap, a three-year calendar showing which campuses we think we can bid and when they can be under construction and what phases of construction they can be in. That's going to be the next step. We don't have that clearly defined yet. But that is the last thing we're working toward. But we do have a master schedule. This kind of tells you kind of at this point where we are and how we hope to get there. Next slide. That was it. That was it. That was done hopefully in the 10 minutes that we were allotted. But again, we put a lot of effort into this by making sure we met every week in person, and or when we weren't able to, we got everybody on the line. We were able to do remotely. Those meetings that you saw there were the regularly scheduled meetings every Tuesday, 10 o'clock every Tuesday. But we had additional meetings with the staff before those meetings to make sure what we were going to discuss the next day was taken care of. We've had very cooperative engineers. We have very cooperative staff, and of course ourselves. It is an all hands on deck. We promised you from the beginning we're going to do everything we can to make this a successful project, as complicated as it may be, and that is hopefully what we can continue to do for you, and obviously keep you informed as we continue this process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Very clear. Very clear. Any questions?
You're very detailed in what you're doing, not only in pricing, I mean, down to the item. But again, I'm going to ask you the same question. Did you verify what the engineers gave you? Did you verify that those were correct?
Correct, we did. Every effort was made to verify. Not only did we request all of their estimates in writing, we broke them down, like I said, by the ton. We had our consultant and all three consultants present in the same room at the time that we were vetting the pricing. Some disagreed, and then we came to a consensus based on their experience. Some told us, look, this is what we just recently did here. Somebody would say, well, we've recently done it too, and we found a way to come up with a number that we felt was conservative enough. So yes, we vetted the phase 1 and phase 2. When we first got this project in November, they'd already been working toward getting somewhere with the designs. At that point, we had a stop and a review in those first few weeks to make sure that it wasn't just based on information the school district provided, but they actually went to the campus to make sure that what they were proposing was reality. You know, we didn't want them just to say, well, the school district said we needed to replace these 510 units and put these air handlers and change them out. We didn't do that. We wanted them to actually see the campus, what's there, does the duct have to be replaced? Are the closets big enough for them to take the units that you're proposing today, because every one of them has a different dimension? So all of those things were accounted for, and in the price based on, you know, if it doesn't fit, what other kind of unit we're gonna use and what kind of cost is that one gonna be based on the size of the unit. So all of those in great detail. I did tell you at the beginning, you know, Trinity Engineering is our sub-consultants, very detailed and very meticulous, and we had him at all our meetings. So yes, we agreed on the price, and then we built in a 15% contingency.
Okay, and then also I know you have a lot of surprises. Did you look into the, say the structure that the unit sits on, if that's gonna have to be refigured, redone because of the tonnage issue, the difference? I mean, in other words, did you turn every rock over?
Slide that shows the detail. Let me go back to one of the slides that shows some of the detail on the vetting. For instance, on for the estimates. I know I just went through it quickly. Like right here, go to the next, right here. Like for instance, next one. Okay, that's good enough right there. So Barrientos, for instance, you see all the different units, the tonnage, the existing tonnage, how old it is, every single one of them was analyzed. But then at the bottom, you see the miscellaneous. You know, for instance, because we're putting in new units and because of possibly code compliance, does it require electrical upgrades? In this particular case at Barrientos, yes, it's $250,000 for electrical upgrades. The testing and balancing, $25,000. The windstorm is structural. We may have to have additional structural because this unit is either heavier or it doesn't have the sufficient support. That's $100,000. The controls, in order for us to replace all these units, obviously the unit in this particular school, the controls cannot be reused. So there's a price in there, $175,000 for controls. And then commissioning, making sure at the end of the day that the engineer tests and make sure that they can commission. In other words, that everything functions the way they verify the functionality of every piece of equipment. That's a high dollar item too. That is also accounted for in this, in every one of the estimates, every campus, every school.
So you went to every campus and verified that we're not just simply putting in units, but where the units are going to sit, that it would be able to hold it, and added that price to this.
Correct. And we itemized it. And we had them justify it to us, tell us why. Every one of those rows had the question why, and how did you know, and what did you do? And Feliciano was there. In some cases, Feliciano said, no, that's not an air handler unit, that's a DX unit. Oh, wait, let's go back. Oh, no. And it was just like that. It was really a session, a fact-finding session. And then after that, verification in the field, and then confirming that it was verified in the field. So this is as detailed as, you know, this is as detailed as we could get to make sure that, you know, we're here with the right information, best information.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Posada. Very well.
Thank you.
Good information. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good meeting. We needed this meeting. We've been waiting to see where are we, because we, like Dr. Salinas, know that y'all are so busy doing so many things at the same time. And I know that sometimes we feel like we don't know enough about what we need to know, but please believe me when I tell you that every single board member is very concerned about not only this item, but the fact that we have so much money coming in that we want to be sure that after the 2024, we can look back and be proud of what we've done with what we got. Because that was God-given, and we need to be sure that we use it for who it's intended for, which is the improvement of the education of this community. And that's why sometimes we kind of get overexcited and make too many calls to you all, but it's all because we want to know. We want to feel good about what is going on. And we want to thank you. I know that we're going to miss you, Robert. I know we chew on you a lot, but we chew you because we love you. And by the way, I hired this guy. I knew he was going to be good for the district.
You did good work for it.
Yes, thank you, Robert.
Thank you for everything you've done.
I will say that there've been 24 wonderful years. Enjoyed every minute. Worked with a lot of wonderful staff, and I don't think that I can even repay you for all of the good things that did happen. While I worked here, I was able to work from pig farms and dog kennels to athletic systems, field turfs, everything. Athletics, fine arts, special ed. It was great. The ride was great. I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. You've done good for our district. Thank you on behalf of the school district. Ms. Gonzalez is right. You know, in the Bible, it says, you know, get after your children if you love them. And I know that we got after you. You and I had our argument, but only because you did good. We're very proud of you, Robert, and I wish you well with your future plans.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Move for adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Oh, my God.